This is Faith-Filled Family Magazine, and I'm here with Daniel and Christina Morrison of Remnant Studios. Could you please tell us your website address so our listening audience can visit while we're talking?
You can find us on the web at www.remnantstudios.com.
Tell us about the scope of what Remnant Studios is able to produce.
We are basically a boutique media production company. And so we handle everything from visual effects to corporate training videos to mobile applications to gaming environment stuff. It's kind of the whole gamut we fulfill and provide.
RemnantStudios.com. How did you come up with that name?
For me, it came from Scripture. It came from, in the Bible, there's multiple times where there's kind of like only a remnant that God left behind as, things hit the fan. And so for me, I just love that concept that there were always those who hadn't bowed the knee to mammon or to the world or to humanism or to whatever that represented that contrast to following God, that there was always a remnant that God kept that were faithful. And that's kind of how I felt trying to go after my dream and calling in film and media, that there was plenty going on in film and media that wasn't representing God, and that I could be a part of a remnant that was doing media that was Christ-centered. And that's where that came from. And I love the name. I actually wrote this, or just kind of brainstormed this short World War II piece that was going to be called The Remnant. And it's something I never did. It was just one of those projects on the shelf, and I like the name. And that's why you have kind of the military-style wings in the logo. So that's where Remnant Studios came from.
Explain your core motto, Be Spent.
We kind of ran across the Ransomed Heart Ministries books, like Wild at Heart, Way of the Wild Heart, Walking with God, all that jazz. It was really, really...
Really wonderful.
Yeah, fantastic material. And for me, it was a heart surgery experience to kind of work that stuff out with the Lord.
It really impacted both of us, I think.
Yeah, it was, and I would recommend it to anybody. If you haven't read it, read it. God will work on you. But one of the parts about that is, kind of God having an adventure for you to live, a battle to fight, and all this stuff. And kind of through that, I felt like a really clear message from God, and that is about moving out of apprehension, moving out of a place of withholding, and the idea that I want to keep my options open. And there's wisdom, but at some point you have to be willing to be spent. And God has really called us to be spent in our lives, to spend the strength that He's given us on, all the calling, the dreams that God's given all of us to pursue. And I think a lot of us hold back waiting and, well, what's the right route? Which way should I go? And for me, as a young guy looking for, where am I going to walk out my calling in media production and filmmaking and stuff, a big part of that question for me was like, well, there's 100 different paths to take. Which one do I do? And I think a lot of that, part of hearing from God is risk, being willing to risk. And so a part of that is just be spent. And that's kind of where that motto for me comes from, is be willing to be spent. There's a phenomenal quote from Titus, Titus Caesar, and he says, to urge men on to actions not involving risk is an insult to them and proof of the speaker's cowardice. And I love that, just because it just smacks of that, get out there and risk, spend yourself on something. And not that you're always going to win, but you're with God, and, walking with God, it's going to be good. And anything that you give Him, He can use. So anyways, that's my thing. Besides, it's a little edgy. I can tell people your calling is BS. And after they get offended, I can explain it to them further if they still want to hear more. So I have fun with that.
On your website, you make mention of an award. Tell us, what was the award for? What was the winning category?
Let's see, this was actually a while ago. It was the WYSIWYG Film Festival in San Francisco. I'd been there a couple years.
It's a Christian festival.
It's a Christian Film Festival in San Francisco. Before we moved out here to Colorado, I was attending and able to attend periodically. And I won Best Director for a short film there, and then a year or so later, I won just like a juried award for another promotional piece for the Gathering of the Unashamed, which was an event that took place in the Bay Area that I did promo materials for. But I won Best Director for a piece called The Hitch. Now, mind you, I wrote this before a popular movie by a similar title came out.
So ours doesn't have Will Smith in it.
So anyways, it was a short that I was trying to do to kind of get out there and get connected, and they kind of liked it, which was awesome. And I will say it was a drastic learning experience because I won Best Director, this award, Best Director at a Christian film festival. And I thought, hey, I won. I should probably show this at some other film festivals. I entered 20 different film festivals, including the film festival in my hometown, and they wouldn't show it at any of them. And that kind of, for me, was a learning experience because it became clear to me that you really need to pick your film festival based on the ideology they are promoting. So that was quite a learning experience, and about $600 worth of fees down the toilet. It didn't even show. So that was wild. But hey, I got to win Best Director. I still have that on the shelf, so I can't complain about that.
You have also released Tarnished. Tell us about that project. What is it? Where is it available?
Before I had even met Daniel, I decided I wanted to write a historical fiction that was based on a popular Old Testament book of the Bible. And I finished the book and I sent it off to a Christian publisher, and at least, they asked to see the whole novel, and I didn't get picked up with it, and I was kind of glad because I wasn't totally happy with it, and I wasn't sure why. And then a few years later, it'd been sitting in my computer. So I got some good advice from a published author who said, you need to write what you love. And I thought, well, I love fantasy. I'm a big reader of C.S. Lewis, The Chronicles of Narnia. I've loved that since I was a child. When I was 5 years old, I drove my older brother and sister crazy, asking them to replay this old record of The Hobbit. So fantasy's in my blood. I love that. And I used to even feel almost guilty. Well, I don't know if a Christian should really like fantasy, but God kind of healed me up of that one. But so I decided to take the story back to the computer again and kind of rewrite it in a fantasy format. And so I did. And it was better. But I still I wasn't quite happy with it. There were a few things that I just knew it wasn't quite right. And so then I met Daniel, and I thought, hey, this is a fun connection. I'd felt like I was called to media as well, not just to the writing side of it. And on one of our first dates, I shared my story with him, and he didn't like it. And I wasn't sure where that was going to go. I was like, wait a minute, you don't like my story. So we didn't cover it a whole lot more until after we were married. It's kind of safer territory.
Yeah, she waited until she couldn't get rid of me, or until I couldn't get rid of her. No.
I had the ring, and then I was good. So then we revisited it again, and Daniel said, it's a good story. It's got some good points to it. We just need to fine-tune some of these things. And so I agreed with him. However, it is hard sometimes when we work together creatively because, we're married and we both have our own definite artistic ideas sometimes. So it's always a little interesting working together on something like this where he has a definite idea about where it should go and I have an idea about where it should go.
So we started about a 6-month fight that by the end... No.
But it was a little challenging, but you know what? I think it goes back to scripture where it says iron sharpens iron, and the story now is so much better than when I wrote it by myself. And there's definitely something that Daniel added as far as we changed the character arc of the main character. We brought in a whole new fantasy character other than the one that I did have, and we kind of modified and fine-tuned the way that we showcased God in the story, and so it just after it was all rewritten. The next time I was like, you know what, this is better than it was with just me.
Yeah, and I know for Christina, part of her motivation in writing Tarnished was just there's a lot of books out there and media out there that makes it really exciting to be in magical or a fantasy land or characters and creatures. And I think kind of our heart about it was we wanted it to be amazing to be human. You know, God made us and put his image and his mark on us. And oftentimes media is downplaying that or spitting on, you know, people as if that's like lower cut rate than animals or nature or, you know, throwing the magic in its magical environment. So I know a big part of it is just wanting to kind of help people recognize like it is a divinely special thing to be made in the image of God. Not that we're saying that during the book, but we wanted that kind of a world where that was what was special. And that was what was unique. So, and I hope that comes through in the book, but that was a big part of it.
Introduce us to a current up-and-coming project that we can be on the watch for.
Let's see. We're doing a number of different things right now. There's a couple of things. Most of them are in the vein of media that's a part of what we did with Tarnished. So we're actually doing a full book trailer for Tarnished. It's kind of like a movie trailer for the book. So we're creating Torvid, the young version of Torvid as a CG dragon. We shot background plates out in Roxborough in the snow. We cast Ted Tarnished as our wizard and Cougar Littlefield as did I say it right? Mm-hmm. Okay. As Vin Stellafar, and we pit them in a fight. Our little kid plays our baby. Our baby plays
there was a 3-month-old at that time.
Garen as a child, as an infant. So and so we're putting all that together as a book trailer. So there's a lot of work there because there's full-on talking 3D character and stuff like that. But
the other thing that we're in process on is we're doing a graphic novel of the book. Now the book is actually there's kind of 3 parts in the book itself. So our plan is to do a graphic novel for each one of those parts.
The book's broken into 3 books. The first one being Suborno, second one Pravitas, and the last one is Expositum. So
yeah,
they're fun. So
we're kind of doing a graphic novel again. I see so many juvenile and young adult kids in the bookstores, and they just eat up those graphic novels. And I think, you know what, we need to have some good graphic novels for them to be able to read.
Currently, today, we're working on the audiobook. We did do a Kickstarter project, the campaign that did not reach its goal, but we are continuing with our goal of actually making the audiobook.
Could you share with us 1 or 2 humorous production stories?
You want to start? I don't know if I have any like fun stories. We've got some funny.
You know, sometimes it's funny if you're there, you know, and then trying to retell it. But I know that one thing that was really neat was when we were doing one production together, I had handled a lot of the kind of the production management side of it, which is like planning, getting the set, you know, calling ahead and making sure that we've got the people there that we need to have and making sure that, you know, all of our crew is got it together. And on this particular shoot, it was one that it would have been really nice if we could have had rain throughout the shoot. That was kind of a theme that went through the short piece. And there was no guarantee that we were going to get rain. We had planned on one day we were going to actually bring a water truck in and have the water truck be shooting on the car, because it was a conversation that took place on the car. But, you know, there was no guarantee that we were going to get rain on the other days. And I remember, since I was a production manager, I was like, that's okay. We will pray. Oh God, please let there be rain on these days. And it was like 3 or 4 days that we were doing the total shoot. And thank you, Lord, it rained on every single one of them. So I don't know if anybody else in that city was that thrilled with me, but I was very grateful for every thunderstorm we had.
I only really know of horror stories on my shoots. No. I think some of the most fun stuff is a friend a friend now loosely. We haven't kept in touch, but he got saved on one of our sets. One of the characters that we cast, an actor got saved. And that was, and I didn't even know about it at the time. I found out maybe 3 months later. And that was just amazingly powerful and just really exciting. Kind of makes you wonder if it had any, if the whole goal of God having you do your production had anything to do with what you finally end up with, or if it was more the process of seeing somebody's life transform. That was, for me, was probably the most fun I've ever had. Probably blowing a fuse in a hospital was a crazy experience. It was an abandoned hospital wing. Everyone was fine.
What are your thoughts and views regarding the Christian media industry?
I'm always a little leery to comment on Christian, like the industry, because I don't feel that I represent that. Because as an indie, I couldn't say that I've
An independent.
As an independent, I don't know that I could say that like I've met them, I've touched, shaken hands with them and worked with everybody in the industry. And now I've been told that it's fairly small as far as what the Christian industry is. I will say, as far as where I believe it's going, is I believe it's going away from the Hollywood mentality. And by that, I mean, I think the world for the indie is totally exploding. The ability to go from product directly to the consumer is probably the future of a lot of media. There's a lot of concern about that by different groups that, as viewers, we're becoming very fractured. We watch what we watch, and that doesn't necessarily represent everybody. It's much more tailored. So I think there's a lot of opportunity in that. And that to me is very exciting, where you maybe wouldn't have been able to get past the gatekeepers or what have you. You have an opportunity to do that. But at the same time, that leaves a lot on your shoulders to do. And we're huge fans of collaboration. So yeah. I've had great experiences with most of the Christian industry peeps that I've had the opportunity of working with.
And I would just add, I don't want it to seem like we're not aware of what is out there, as far as in the Christian industry. And I think that, it's easy for us as, since media is our niche, it's very easy to be maybe ultra critical of what's out there, just because I think for Daniel and I, we want to be better even than what Hollywood puts out. It's we don't want it to be substandard. We don't want anything to be substandard. We want it to jut out further, like Daniel in Babylon. He was better than all the Chaldeans. A spirit of excellence. And so it would be very easy to be critical about what has been produced. But you know what? I know that the Bible says, don't despise the day of small beginnings. Yeah. And so I think we cheer on what is going on. And we have vision for the future that says we want it to be better. We want to have awesome stories for wonderful Christian artists to be able to take part in and act in and feel proud of. And that's really our heart.
I do love what is happening with Sherwood Pictures and Facing the Giant and the stuff that they're doing. I love to see the involvement with the church and media production. I think that's fantastic. I hope that catches like wildfire in churches and they get a vision for that and put the right people in place to go after that sort of thing. I think there's a lot of opportunity to collaborate across the body of Christ. I think the church as a whole, if it's collaborative, that is a distribution network. And I do hope to see that tapped and utilized and see that grow. But I do think that it's really important that the core values match and that's clear and open when we go into a production of any sort with the people you collaborate with, because that's just can be a big deal breaker. And not that you're going to agree with everybody on everything, but that's one place that you can, really get on board with each other. There's films that have come out of the Christian industry that I kind of cringe and go, what? One Night with the King, I didn't get that. That for me was, where did this come from? How did this get the Dove stamp of approval when, it matters. A lot of this stuff matters. And I want to say that, to get myself in trouble with people, but mostly because I think that there are a lot of folks who will try to straddle Christianity and the world. They want a song that sounds like you're singing about Jesus, but could also mean you're singing about your significant other. And I don't think we need to be those kinds of people. I think God is building filmmakers who are going to be people of character that can present stories of character. What I will say is that I believe there are Christians, and I've met Christians in all kinds of different positions in the industry that I think are looking for projects to be a part of and looking for something of value to invest themselves into. And not that I, think that you need to be doing anything and everything for free. But what I'm saying is that there are collaborators, there are people who are waiting. And I think the Christian industry needs instigators. If you feel like God's called you to do something and you're willing to do it with excellence and do what it takes to do it with excellence, you will run across artists and that are interested in being a part of something worth doing. And I think that's probably what a lot of people are starving for in the industry. And that is, there are not a whole lot of worthwhile projects coming out that they can throw their weight behind and say, that I would be proud of waking up and knowing I did that. And so I would encourage you, instigate away.
How did you know your calling in life was going to be in media production? Did a mentor guide you? Was it a film? What led to that?
So for me, I was a little slower in figuring that out, just because I think God had to do some stuff on the inside of me first, before I could kind of dream as big as He really wanted me to. So I sat down one day and I thought, you know what? I love the story of Joseph in the Old Testament, and he had big dreams. And I'm going to write out my dream. Like, what if I could fail at nothing, what do I really feel like I would love to be a part of? And so I wrote, I wanted to write stories that were going to have an impact. At the time I was teaching, and I loved teaching my students, but I thought I can only impact about 20 kids a year by teaching. And if I write a book that can be something that kids really enjoy, I can have a much greater impact, a much greater influence. And then I thought, okay, and let's take the lid off. I want to be a part of media. I want to be a part of seeing those stories come and be made into movies so that they can impact an even greater audience. And this was all before I met Daniel. So when I met him and I realized he was involved with media, I thought, wow, this could be really cool.
It's actually the only thing that attracted me to him.
Not so.
For me, I think I'm a little off from most folks' experiences. And that was when I was about 11, I had a conversation with the Lord and I realized, hey, wait, so I'm a Christian. You didn't, kill me off after I got saved so I could go to heaven directly. So I'm probably going to spend some time down here. I'm probably going to have to get a job, and I'll probably spend 40 hours of the week on my job. So that's probably the biggest decision right about now to make, because that's where I'm going to spend most of my life probably. And so I had this kind of conversation with the Lord about, well, what should I actually be doing with my time down here? What have you called me to do? What have you made me to do? At the time, I'd done acting and a bit of acting, and folks had really liked my acting. So I thought, I'll be a Christian actor. And then my follow-up thought was, that sounds kind of broke. So I thought, maybe I should be one of the people that make the productions. At the time, I don't know if that's producer or director. I don't know what that is. And that way, somebody else could be a Christian actor and not be totally broke. So that was my thinking, and that's why I had that conversation with the Lord. I felt like that was what He had called me to. And the follow-up to that was, I figured if God had called me to this is do everything with all your might, as unto the Lord, I thought I'm probably going to be shooting at making the best films I can possibly make. And thus the attitude about going after excellence as much as is possible within the tools that God's given me. So that's kind of where I got traction. I was about 11 years old, and I had the opportunity to edit video, do nonlinear editing early for a kid in my position, and had a blue house, used it for blue screen and clear skies on a clear day. So I started playing with it and kind of took off from there.
Would you share with us one coping skill that God has given you in balancing your family, work, and faith?
I think a huge part of like striking a balance for me is getting rid of my humanism. And I think a lot of us are very good Christian humanists. And what I mean by that is we're busy making things happen in our own strength. And that's where we get weary. That's where we tire out. That's where we really get burned out. And I want to be spent, but I don't want to be burned out. I want to spend myself well. And part of that is letting God work out my humanism. There are beliefs that I have that are very American. You can do anything if you set your mind to it, that are absolutely not godly. And you can only do what God enables you to do.
I think it a part of that is just every day going to God and going, all right, what's on our agenda today? And some days that's taking the kids to the library and making sure that we go by the store afterwards to get a good dinner going for the evening. And some days that might involve promoting the book online while the kids are kind of, either playing or sitting on my lap while I'm doing that. So it's kind of a day to day going back to God and saying, what are we going to do today, Lord?
Yeah.